Parallax. You are now tuned into the Parallax Effect. It's not the message, it's the messenger. What up, Ryan? It's time. Parallax. Oatmeal's better than no meal. Guess who's back to make mountains out of molehills? If this don't move you, I bet my folks will. This beat's smooth, but trust me, there ain't no chill. Ask Ryan, if I'm lying, I'm flying. It's the sculpture of all aspects of the culture. Parallax. The People's Podcast is back, laying it down flat for you wherever you at. Your job, or your car, or your jog, or your flight. Loads of archives with no ending in sight. Hitting on any topic, long as it ain't no nonsense. You can see the others for the drama and the gossip. Word to Brett, best there ever was, recognize it. Never secondary, my eyes stay on the pocket. Parallax, sit back and recline, relax and enjoy the ride. Cause it's that Parallax, and you're here, that's mad respect. Welcome to the Parallax Effect, yeah.
All right, we are on. So here we go. Welcome to the special edition of the Parallax Effect Podcast, Ph.D. edition. We're fulfilling an assignment role right here, but nonetheless, getting to talk to one of our favorite people. My name is Ryan Lavelle. I am the host of this show. Welcome back. We have been off for a while. We will continue to be off because we're trying to figure out how we put back together our set and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get into that maybe another time. But again, this is the Parallax Effect Podcast, navigating through the shifting tides of perspectives and all that good stuff. But let's get to it, because today we have a very, very esteemed, very, very successful, very, very tenured professional today on the 405 freeway. If you know anything about Southern California, the 405 is where it is at. So he is sharing the road with a bunch of folks trying to get back to their families, as is he. So he is a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, orthopedic specialist, that's OCS, a manual fellow, that's FAAOMPT, and most recently, as of last weekend, a Ph.D. graduate, something I really, really aspire to be. So I really love that. He is one of the head physical therapists for your Los Angeles Lakers. You heard it right, the LA Lakers, keeping them prime, keeping them in shape. He is a member of Team USA, that basketball that won gold in Paris 2024 as a physical therapist. He was there with them. He's got the pictures to prove it. He is a West Coast University tenured faculty. He's been making it happen over there at West Coast, where I am fortunate to be now as well too. So that's where we got to cross paths again, which was really, really cool. He also shares the same mentor as myself, that being the lovely Kathy Kumagai Shimamura. We always think about her all the time because she set us off on such a great path. And most importantly, he is the father to the young homie, young Dorian. So without further ado, I want to introduce, happy Father's Day, by the way, because I just passed. I want to introduce y'all to the man, the myth, the legend is here, young Dustin Willis. How you doing, big bro?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm excited to be here. We've talked about doing this for a while, and so it finally happened. You know, the assignment brought us together to finally get to sit and have some of these chats. So I'm hyped to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
These stars have definitely aligned, and I'm glad that they did so, because, man, this, like you said, this has been a conversation I've been really wanting to have for a while now. So getting into kind of some of the things that we, really want to discuss for this assignment. Let's start from, from at least clinical practice, right? We all know, came up, did your thing, DPT, not an easy thing to do. Straight to the clinic, maybe, or what was your journey like from clinical practice moving on towards higher education?
Man, it's kind of, I don't know, funny is the right word, but I feel like coming out of that and figuring out this is what I want to do, how do I get here, I just don't feel like I had that guidance. So as we start talking about being in higher ed, like that's all I've ever tried to be for the students is what I wish I had. So straight out of school, all I had was this dude. Anyone who's familiar with Loma Linda physical therapy will know the name Pete Lingus. Pete Lingus is the OG man that everybody aspired to be like. And so all I knew was Pete Lingus did residency and fellowship right after PT school, so I'm gonna do residency and fellowship right after PT school. And not only that, I don't know if it was just like feeling I needed more to compete, imposter syndrome, probably a combination of all the above, but I didn't stop with just residency fellowship. I did residency fellowship times 3, because yeah, alphabet soup, all that stuff within our field was mad alluring, and I naively thought that I was going to reach this point of having it all figured out, and kept getting frustrated when I would finish a program and wouldn't feel that way. And so it took 3 fellowships to finally get through to my thick head that that's not a real thing.
Right. And I'm glad you touched on that, because I think a lot of folks that we come across, especially coming up through, physical therapy school and beyond, have all those credentials and they're doing all these things. So, the only way you feel like you can kind of match up with them is to become that. And speak on that a little bit, especially the imposter syndrome thing, because that's a real thing. I have it. We all have it. What do you say to someone who's coming up like you did with the same type of feelings of like, what do I need to do to make myself stand out?
I feel like my perspective on it has shifted, because, you hear that any time something gets syndrome thrown at the end, you're like, oh, it kind of just takes on this life form of its own. And so initially, I just always saw it as a negative, like, man, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, have no clue about any of this, and I'm going to get found out because, people think, oh, you've done all these programs, you must be so great. And internally, I was like, I'm not, though. So it was just this constant internal conflict. And so how it's flipped, or at least I've tried to flip it for me, and the advice I would give is, I truly do think to a certain degree it's healthy to aspire to better yourself and constantly reflect on where you're at and maybe how it may be disconnected from perception or whatever it may be. The problem, like with most things, though, is when you get swept away by these feelings and it is just constantly gnawing at you. Like, you have to try to find a way to harness it and use it to your benefit to still kind of grow, almost, growth mindset type stuff.
And I've never quite heard it explained like that, like using it to as a strength. So it's really, really refreshing to hear you say that, because, that could be a huge message for some folks. Like we said, when we asked the question coming up, trying to figure out where do they rank, where do they fall, how do they, but to harness that kind of, I guess, insecurity and use it in a more formidable way. I think that's a fantastic piece of advice that already, that you're able to give to some of us folks who may struggle in that area. So, moving on with the next question here for sure. The transition to academia, like, was that an easy transition, natural, unnatural, hard? How did that go?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be in academia to some degree. So that's why I started my PhD so soon. So within all that craziness, 2 of the fellowships I did at the same time concurrently. And towards the end of those 2 fellowships is when I started the PhD. And so, yeah, it's been a long journey for me, 9 years in totality, with a year leave of absence because of, my son Dorian, which we'll talk about more. So that was always on my radar, and it's because of, our late great mentor, Kathy, and just watching her and just wanting to positively influence our field in as many ways as possible. So, like, I'm thinking I want to be in the clinic directly helping patients. I want to be teaching or mentoring students, residents, fellows, whatever, to like pass things on to the future generation, and also contributing to the body of literature via research, just to, leave this thing better than how I found it was the goal. And so had that in the back of my mind. finished those two fellowships concurrently, and then started the APU one with Kathy and Claire as the mentors, and was super excited for that. And, Dorian wasn't a planned child for me. We kind of found out, to our surprise, ironically, on April 1st of all days, and it flipped our whole world upside down.
Wow.
Just for one, having a kid that you didn't plan on having, and me personally, I actually didn't really want kids. Just not having a dad around growing up, didn't think I'd be able to live up to something I had no guidance on, and just the state of the world, I was really conflicted about it. But finally, it was okay. All right, I'm about to be a dad. Let's do this. And then Dorian's born, and immediately code blue. They rush him to the NICU, and it starts this whole medical complex special needs disability parent journey for me. And I had to take a leave of absence from the fellowship, took a leave of absence from the Ph.D. I was still working in the clinic at the time, and it was straining, not only to me, but you can imagine working outpatient orthopedics, you have a full schedule, 12 to 14 patients every day. And when something's going on with my son and he's fighting for his life in the NICU, I got no choice but to call off. And so it was getting really hard on the clinic I was at. And I mean, they weren't like, hey, we're going to fire you, but it was getting to a tipping point. And so I was like, man, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. I need something that's more flexible. Maybe I need to change careers. I don't know what to do. And serendipitously, a good friend of mine that I did one of the fellowships with, Rob Dulay, a former professor of his, was at West Coast University. And he reached out to Rob and asked, hey, would you be interested in coming on full-time faculty, take over the musculoskeletal course series? I think you'd be great for it with all your training. Rob was like, nah, I'm not interested, and took an adjunct role. And he was just telling me about it, not for me to apply, but just kind of the experience. And I was like, given my situation and knowing that I do want to eventually end up in academia, maybe I might be interested. So applied, ended up getting the job and getting thrust into academia way sooner than I anticipated, way sooner than I felt ready, but just went along with it, made it happen. Thankfully, they didn't hire me solo to do all the musculoskeletal by myself. Colleague Andrew Sullivan, they actually hired us both. We were interviewing against each other, but they liked us both, so they brought us both on. And having him there to navigate coming into academia and not knowing what we're doing was such a blessing, man. I couldn't imagine that transition without him there with me and us figuring stuff out together, because it was still rough, but I had someone right there by my side, so we got through it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is kind of a good way to ease yourself into academia if you got somebody you're going in there with.
Yeah.
But let's stick on Dorian right now for just a moment.
Yeah.
I think that because I don't think you and I have ever actually spoken
No.
at length. So this is kind of our first conversation about it too. But such a blessing, I guess. Unknowingly, Dorian obviously coming into the picture, and what has he done for your growth as obviously a man, as a new father, as a leader? What has he done for you?
He's changed everything about me, just my perspective on life and what truly matters and how fragile and just much we need to cherish every given moment. And all of us at one point or another are patients for some type of healthcare interaction, right? We all get that experience. But working in healthcare, the proportions of the amount of times you're on the provider side versus the patient side are often very skewed. And so being his dad has skewed things in the opposite direction for me. I am on the patient side of that interaction way more than I am the provider side of that interaction. So it's just opened my perspective on like all the opportunities still there for not only our field but healthcare as a whole to truly serve people better, and just the opportunities that are lacking. And in terms of leadership, I think it's really helped me hone whatever innate empathic presence was in me, just to be able to relate to people and truly try to put myself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. And, the communication that revolves around that, I think, is the core of what I would define a good leader to be, honestly.
Right, right. And so, man, like I said, happy belated Father's Day. We're the week after at the taping of this, episode/project. But you're one of the first people I thought about, when it comes to that day, because of the special relationship, obviously, you and Dorian have had. Um,
Yeah.
how, on you and your family, you, especially Dorian himself, how, difficult has it been advocating, and you feel comfortable talking about some of the healthcare struggles as much as you want or don't want, right? This is your private life. But how has that been for you, and just talk about Dorian the fighter, man.
It's been rough, bro. I mean, that probably goes without saying. I think I don't want this to come across the wrong way, because we've met some incredible healthcare providers. Like, there's been amazing physicians, nurses, respiratory therapy, like the whole gamut, right? We've had amazing ones. But because the sample size is so astronomically large with how many specialists and appointments and hospitalizations we have to deal with, it's led to more frustration than anything else. Like, one instance, I won't call people out by specialization or hospital they're affiliated with, but we'll just say it was some form of surgery. And like, they don't even look at Dorian. Like, there's no evaluation, there's no interaction with him as a human being. Like, he's just a chart to them with a diagnosis. And then with interacting with us as his parents, it's just like mom, dad, these blanket they tell to anyone who's in there with a child, right? So there's just no connecting to what this lived experience is really like for us or even our child. Like, I mean, I get it. He's nonverbal. He can't communicate, can't do anything by himself. But, bro, I mean, you've probably seen in pictures. Obviously, we haven't had the chance to have you meet Dorian in person yet. There is so much communication that happens without words. You know that just intuitively. But especially with these kids, man, if you just give them a chance rather than just writing them off as like, oh, he can't talk anyway, I don't need to interact with them. So frustrating in that way, and frustrating just how hard we have to fight for the things that he needs or the things that we see to be taken seriously. Like, we had a recent hospitalization where his G-tube was bleeding actively, and he's like making faces like he's in pain and he's in discomfort. And so we take him in, and we're like, can you please like scope his G-tube, scope his GI tract, like see something isn't right. And they're doing all these other tests, and they're like, oh, it looks like he has a UTI. And we're like, no, he's colonized down there. He's had over 20 UTIs in his lifetime. That's not an active UTI. He's not having this, and this symptoms. That's not what's going on. Please listen to us. And like, oh, no, doesn't seem like it's that. It's because he's low iron. And so that's why he's uncomfortable. And it was like, well, what does that have to do with the bleeding? And it's just like, constantly have to advocate and fight, and almost like get stern, which isn't me. Like, I hate confrontation, and so it's caused me to grow in handling those difficult conversations in that way. But really, and I'll close with this, what it makes me feel the most is like both me and Katrina, Dorian's mom, we're both healthcare workers. She's also a physical therapist. So like we have a lot of knowledge. We have health literacy that affords us an advantage in navigating all of this stuff. And it just makes me think of all the families that we see all the time in all these clinics and in the hospitals that don't have the luxury of working in healthcare and knowing so much about how it works and having health literacy and just thinking like, damn, man, I know how hard this is for me. I can't imagine what it's like for them.
Right. Right. And it's such a sad truth to live. I'm gonna tell you a super quick story because this isn't my interview, it's your interview, about my mom, who was a registered nurse, and when she would go, she basically for the most part ended her career doing, or was the better, the I guess zenith of her career was doing dialysis for patients. Anyway, and so she would go to a patient's, she was going to a patient's room, and they would say, yeah, you got to be in room 232. She's like, I don't know who room 232 is. That person has a name. Like, we gonna call them by their name. Like, it was simple to her, you know what I mean? And so I could totally understand you saying it's not like we trying to, down some healthcare professionals, but actually we're just trying to spread the news of what, some of the more empathetic ones can do. Because, and this is what this whole program leadership class thing I'm doing is all about, is just trying to spread the possibilities that are out there, and anybody can jump in and fulfill them. And if we can do that, we can have a very much more successful healthcare system despite all the challenges. I said that was going to be quick. It obviously wasn't, but you and I could talk about that all day. But
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you know that. But I'll move on to kind of this next question here, kind of maybe two questions in one. But like, maybe in your kind of coming into leadership roles, and we'll talk about maybe your newest role coming up. But what are some maybe hard lessons you've learned along the way, or do you have a moment that had a meaningful impact, or either on yourself or on your colleagues, or both?
Ooh, man. Yes. I guess two parts. And the first part is like the bad experience with, and maybe this isn't what you're looking for, but it's more like with the person who is supposed to be the leader and how it impacted related to me. But we'll start there, and then maybe we could branch off. So a leader who we both have worked under, I was in a meeting with, and we were doing a yearly review, right? And the topic came up. I think I had missed like 2, maybe even 3 Wednesday faculty meetings because something happened with Dorian. And, when something's going on with Dorian, I'm 9 times out of 10 gonna be there with him by his side, right? And so it's not something I have control over, but in the same breath, I've made so many sacrifices too. Like, I've done faculty meetings from the ICU. I've walked to campus from the ER at the hospital. So it's a balance. But anyway, we're having my yearly review. The topic of me missing those 2 or 3 faculty meetings come up, and the leadership, the person in charge, kind of as a joke says, oh, I'm going to have a talk with Dorian about having issues on faculty day meetings. And I was just like, yo, that's not funny, bro. Like, this is my son's life. Like, I don't find that funny at all. And the lesson learned for me is I guess one of my biggest struggles throughout my life has been emotional regulation. And so in the moment, I didn't say anything because I was just trying to keep it all in. But then after the meeting ended and I sat with it, it just infuriated me. So I sent this super angry email, and we had this back and forth, and then it just led to this whole thing. And it was a tough lesson for me, because I'm all about authenticity and being vulnerable and expressing how you're feeling, but there's a balance too, because it just, you got to give yourself time so that when you are communicating it, you're not in the thick of the emotion and it's not emotionally charged, which I think was my mistake in that instance. And I mean, obviously the mistake of leadership is like, bro, you got to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Again, empathy, right? Like, is that really something you want to joke about with somebody who has a child that's constantly fighting for their life? And like, he wasn't supposed to live past 5 years old. They said he had a 30% chance, and he's about to be 8. So like every day is a fight and a blessing. So that was the negative side.
Mm.
And then, I left that position, went into the new position I'm at now, and I have a meeting with leadership person in charge. And because of that and other instances growing up, I'm always kind of like anxious about people in positions of authority. I feel kind of uneasy. And right off the bat, they just made it known. I think they have an advantage of they work in peds, so they know like the ins and outs of this type of struggle. And so they were just set the stage very affirming. I know how much you're juggling. I know there's going to be challenges for you, and you're going to have to kind of make tough decisions on being here or being there. Just know you have my full support. I'm always here for you. Here's my cell phone number if there's anything I could ever do to help support you and everything going on with your son. And I was just taken aback. I was like,
Wow.
It got me choked up. Like, bro,
Right.
I've never had this before. I've actually had the opposite. So I really didn't know what to do with it, but in an amazing way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you got to experience the latter story, not I'm sorry. Yeah, the latter story, not the former one, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
um and I think it all kind of does come full circle now because, I mean, this is probably the first true breaking news that we've ever had on the Parallax Effect podcast. Is, if you're comfortable talking about it, you now have the opportunity to, lead the very program that, gave you your first shot at West Coast University. Is that okay to break that news? Because it's going to be broken by the time people watch this anyway.
Yeah, I mean, by the time people watch this, there's a lot of figuring out what this is going to look like long term. Like, do I need to step away from my current role at the university I was just kind of talking about? So there's a lot up in the air, but yeah, I mean, the opportunity is there, and I think I'm still processing it. Like, it's not really something I ever saw myself doing in terms of leader in that way, I guess, if that makes sense. But I think to your point, it is kind of a cool full circle moment to be able to come back and do whatever my version of how I feel like this should look and see how it goes.
Yeah, because I mean, I want to, give you your flowers too. Like, even now, you're still discussed, amongst the students of powerful, professors, meaningful leaders, right? We saw when we saw each other during their last year during their white coat ceremony, like the most exciting part of their experience, besides getting maybe even above getting the coat, was seeing you. You had just came back from the Olympics. Nobody knew you were going to be there. At least, it was a surprise to many of them. So you coming back to an arena where you had a very, very meaningful impact on a lot of people. So I know it is a juxtaposition. You have a current role. Here comes another one. But when you're that good, that's what happens. Stuff comes up. You don't know when it's coming. Now you got to, make this, make that. But it's still a very beautiful opportunity or situation, despite how,
Yeah,
emotionally, mentally juggling it might be. So
1,000%, 1,000%. Thank you for that, bro.
yeah, no doubt. I appreciate it, man. And then, so, kind of just a couple other questions I had on this list, would be kind of what leadership qualities do you admire in others? Some of you, speak to some of your mentors that we maybe just mentioned, as well. What qualities do you admire in leaders?
Yeah, to me, I think we've already said just that ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. If you want to call it empathy, I don't really care about the label, but you have to try to understand the human beings or being in front of you and like where they're coming from and the things that are influencing whatever it is they're trying to communicate with you. I think that's central to any and all human interaction, which is really what being a leader is. Like it's interacting and helping guide other humans. So like if you don't have that surface level ability to try to understand other people and where they're coming from, and then on top of it layering communication into it, I think is another central core component that I valued. And you want to call it authenticity, genuineness, warmth. Like I'm very specifically thinking of our common mentor, Kaak, right? And just like what were the things that made her so special? And it was just for me how she always made you feel so seen, like seen, understood, supported, heard, cared for, and she was never scared to like do the work. It wasn't like leading you and sending you off to battle on your own. Like she would be side by side with you through whatever it was you were facing. And so she is like the epitome of what I strive to be personally.
Right, and I'll echo those symptoms, and I mean those comments and those contributions that you said, and I'll also add this, especially when it comes to Kathy, is she led without needing to be like authoritative. You know, it's like it's like a
Yeah.
bad connotation that comes with that. A leader got to be strict, got to be this, got to be that. She led with not that. She led like
She led
was
with
like
love.
yeah, was the softest voice in the room, but
Yep.
still, I mean, like when I got accepted to APU, Azusa Pacific University, I was interviewed by her and Dr. Michael Lehman, and he was, and no slight against him, and I'm not slighting anybody, but he was a little bit more of the bad cop in that interview, right? And she was like the good cop, and her choice, she's the one who chose to accept me. He did not want to, but her choice overrode his choice, and she did it, like you said, with love. So that catapulted me off, onto my journey as well too. um so I definitely, every chance I get, I want to preach, what she did for us, and I'm just so glad that you and I get a chance to reconnect down the road, sharing a mentor like that. It's really awesome.
Man.
um I know that time is of the essence, so I just got a couple more minutes. I'm gonna do one more question and I'm gonna try to run a quick lightning round and then get you done, get you out of here real quick. So what let me see, like, are there, and then based on the way you came up, are there specific kind of maybe a mindset or specific skills that you think, or maybe that you wanted to have, or that you think students should have coming up now, maybe into either a clinical role, academic role, research role, whatever?
Ooh. So obviously, probably already painted the picture of how important I feel like the relational aspect is of everything. That's what my PhD dissertation revolves around. So I always tell students, and I think it's specific to clinical or academic. You probably don't need it as much in research because you could be isolated, alone, doing your research. But even there's probably some human interaction. But if you can't relate and connect to the people that you're working with, it doesn't matter how smart you are or whatever great hands-on technique, exercises. None of that matters if you can't make that connection with the person and get them to believe in you and what it is you want them to do. So that's paramount for me. If we're talking clinically, I think the other huge piece is, I'm almost hesitant to say it because I feel like personally it gets tossed out all the time, but people don't actually know what they mean when they say it, and it's clinical reasoning. So being able to reason through your thought process, make sense of your thought process, and understand the why behind the decisions that you're making is everything as well. Because humans are complex systems. And so there is a lot of factors influencing whatever is going on with the person you're working with. And if you can't rationally work through a decision-making thought process and kind of make sense of information that is coming at you, you're going to end up lost, giving just a bunch of stuff that may or may not be impactful, and maybe you'll have good outcomes because a lot of it is probably just based on the relationships you can create with the person, but you won't actually be able to use that information moving forward to continue to help your decision making and thought process. So those two things combined, I think, are the magical core pieces of what helps someone be great in our field.
Wise words of wisdom from the man, Dustin Willis. He is here with us in the Parallax Effect Podcast, Special Edition Ph.D. project. I appreciate it so much, man. I got a couple, so we do this kind of lightning round thing, right? We call it light speed. It's gonna go real quick. I got a couple words / phrases, and you just, whatever comes to mind, you just go for it. You want to do that?
Got it. Let's go.
All right, here we go. First coming up, greatest of all time, the GOAT. Who is it?
What are we talking? Are we talking physical therapy? Are we talking hip hop? Like, what are we talking? We talking basketball?
Yeah, no, I had to make it more. I was just gonna see which sport or profession came to your mind, but let's say, since you did work for the Lakers, let's say basketball. Who's the GOAT?
Man, it's got to be Kobe, man. No disrespect to MJ or Bron, but those conversations are tough because there's just so much context that goes into it, and operationally, how are you defining greatest? And for me, it's who had the greatest impact on me personally. And so
that's a good way
Kobe,
to define it,
coming up, man, just it's almost like people in Southern California all probably feel this way, but it feels like we grew up with him, because he came in at 18, and we got to see all his trials and tribulations and the growth he had to go through and the literal trial he went through, and it was just hugely impactful on my formative years. I would probably say, as a professional, it's got to be Bron, man. He's worked with both the boys for 2 years apiece, and that's helped me, give me other opportunities. So as a physical therapist professional, it's Bron.
Yeah. I'm rolling with Bron too, man. He's done a lot for a long time, and like you said,
you can't take away from that, man. Like, we've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And he's never had any issues. Like, stand-up guy, about his family, committed to the work. Like I said, I hate to pick one because, man, I admire so much about Bron.
Yeah. No, we in the same camp as far as that's concerned. So it's, we recognize real is always going to be something that we have in common. How about let's stick with it's not quite a GOAT, but like maybe your favorite historical leader.
Ooh, man, historical leader. I guess my first instinct is to say Martin. I've always been a words guy, so I like to write myself. I love reading, and not only just the words spoken, because I don't know off the top of my head, did he write everything? Did he have people helping him write the speech? But there's so much power in someone that is a good orator. Like, man, to me, that's like the magic of hip-hop. It's like, man, just if you got somebody that's halfway decent with their rhymes, but man, just the way they say it can just be convincing to you. You listen to Martin speak, and like, you be ready to run through a wall for dude, bro. Like,
several walls.
I kind of low key feel the same way about Obama too, right? Like, I can listen to that guy talk forever. So I think my first kind of rapid fire would be Martin.
Yeah, and I think, we staying on the GOAT conversation. I think Martin is the GOAT of all orators,
Yep.
and then and Obama is definitely up there, probably top 5, top 3,
Yep.
especially of our generation. But like Martin inspired a whole movement, man. It's just
Man, powerful, dude.
powerful, for sure, for sure. Favorite moment with Dorian?
Ooh, man. Favorite moment. I think it's super dope that my son and us have been through so many things, and like it feels like so much has been taken from him as a child and taken from us as like parents, because so much of it is caregiving and not actually feeling like a parent, and so much of his experience is medical, not actually getting to be a kid. So to be able to say that my son has been to both LeBron and Kevin Durant's houses is pretty cool, and like a favorite moment, because not only, oh my God, they're at their houses, but just the way they were with him and just interacting and being open and welcoming. And it's like the opposite of what we talked about in the hospital, where like they wouldn't even acknowledge no assessment because he's nonverbal, but they're like Bron and KD having conversations with my son, knowing he can't talk back or do nothing, was super, super special and an amazing moment for me.
Man, so glad young Dorian got to experience that, man. And so glad that, some of our, most renowned athletes that we look up to for obviously their performance and the way they conduct themselves matched. You met your heroes and it worked out. You know how the saying goes, the other way around. So I'm so glad to hear that, man. I have one more and then we're gonna move on, close the show up. But this one word, just tell me what it means to you, and that word is legacy.
Ooh, man. I mean, it's kind of funny because before Dorian, I probably would have thought about my career and like what impact, and talking about I wanted to be in research and working with patients directly and future students. But honestly, Dorian is my legacy, and just that's what my word is, Dorian, or my son.
Dorian, yes, young Dorian, man. We love you so much, man, and you're such an influence to us. Just watching you fight, watching your relationship with your dad, your parents. We love seeing it, man. Keep it up, young Dorian. Man, wow, this was, thank you so much for this. We're gonna close up, but I'm gonna give the closing to you. So how we do this is we close up with something we call the 3 points, right? And I'm a huge international football soccer fan. And most of the leagues and tournaments are designed when a team wins a match, they get 3 points. So at the Parallax Effect Podcast, we like to think we won, so we get 3 points, and the 3 points are allocated to you. So 3 major, just what do you want to leave our audience with? Three major points. This is the 3 points with featuring the one and the only Dustin Willis. The floor is yours.
Man, I guess the first point I would like to leave is people look at us. I lump you in with me, and I know you're giving me all these flowers, but I view us as on the same level with this. But they look at us and think like, man, that is so far away, and like I aspire to be that. And they have this perception that I had of my mentors and people that I looked up to, that was like, they're so far removed from me, they have all the answers, they have everything all figured out. And one of the biggest things that I always try to do working in academia is break down that facade. Like, I don't know. Half the time at least, I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, that was my favorite response to students when they would ask these questions, and I'm like being honest, like, bro, I do not know. I'll look it up for you and try to find out, but I have no clue. And so I just want them to understand that we're not as far off from where you are as you maybe think. And it's not that we're way up here. Yeah, we're a little further along on the road, but we're here to kind of give you what we learned along the way and hopefully help propel you past us is really the goal. So we're not that far away from where you are, would be point number one. Point number two, I think I've already beat it in the head, but man, get to know the human being in front of you in everything that you do in this profession and in life, bro. That's just life advice. Like, if you can come into things with just curiosity, like, I call it naked curiosity, not in that way, get your mind out the gutter, but just non-judgmental curiosity, like, that's interesting. I wonder why they said that, or I wonder why they feel that way, or I wonder how they interpreted what I said to them. It's gonna serve you extremely well in any field, but especially ours, because so much of it is relation. So master those interaction skills. And 3, man, maybe this is similar to the first one, but maybe not. I would say I personally have failed way more times than I've ever succeeded or done these things that people kind of see and like, oh my God, it's so amazing, Lakers, Olympics. But even in those experiences, man, we could have a whole nother pod about how I could have done so much better with the Lakers and taking care of Kev at the Olympics. Man, there's just so much failure that you don't actually see because it's just not the world that we live in where people broadcast it like that, especially with high profile clients. Like, you don't want to be putting everybody's business out there, but I need y'all to change your relationship with failure, quote unquote.
Right.
Because that is where the magic happens. Like, we're so scared of failing or messing up, but that is where the most growth, that is where the gold is at, bro. Like, you gotta be willing to look stupid, to fall on your face, to mess up, because otherwise you're never gonna push your limits and actually change.
I'm nodding my head so much in agreement with you that the Zoom recording is asking if I'm listening to music. That really just happened. Wow. So yeah, don't be afraid to fail. You heard it from the man himself, Dustin Willis. We got him in the Parallax Effect Podcast. PT, DPT, OCS, FAAOMPT, Ph.D. Soak it all in. We appreciate you so much, young Dustin. We're gonna come to a close. You know, Dustin's got to do his thing, man. It's the evening. Got to get inside, get ready for the rest of his evening, prepare for tomorrow because we're gonna see each other tomorrow too. It's gonna be fantastic. So on behalf of myself, on behalf of young Dustin Willis, this has been another episode of the Parallax Effect Podcast, where every angle reveals a new depth of understanding.
Appreciate you, man.